Now, and welcome back to Zombie Squad Cast. And this episode, I got Zach Book. Zach and I go way back, maybe 10, 15 years. We worked with each other on a couple of projects. I know you were in Baltimore when Live Free or Die Hard was in town. And I know you met some colleagues of mine at the time on that set, and then we worked on Misplaced. Now, did you work on National Treasure 2, Book of Secrets, when it was in DC?
I did.
You worked on National Treasure also, right?
Yes.
All right. So yeah, you and I, so we definitely worked on National Treasure 2. We worked on a couple of indie shorts. I think we worked on Misplaced together and maybe some other random indies. I'm not sure, but me and Zach go way back. So Zach, tell me, tell our viewers who you are, what you do, what you've been up to, a little bit of New York, a little bit of California.
Sure, man. Started in Baltimore. Like you said, I worked on Live Free or Die Hard. I was actually in high school at the time. I had a teacher tell me that there's a film shooting in Baltimore. What am I doing in class? And he was joking. I took him seriously. I went downtown and I landed on the set. And it was my first time ever on a film set. And I literally just started walking around asking people, how do I get a job on set? And eventually one guy says, talk to that guy. And it turned out to be the AD. The AD said he needed someone tomorrow. He had no idea I was actually too young to work on a film set. But I had just gotten into Towson as a film student. So we said, I like film students, come back tomorrow. And that's where we met a few mutual acquaintances. And Live Free or Die Hard led to Misplaced, led to National Treasure 2, led to The Wire. I spent a lot of time on The Wire, and really a ton of stuff in Baltimore. And there was a pilot that came to town. I was working in the office on, and I got offered a job in LA basically. And I moved out to LA, and upon landing that job, the director, producer of the show we were working on, on the Warner Brothers lot, I think I'm in, fires his assistant. And next thing I know, I'm in there and I'm working at Jerry Bruckheimer's. I'm working on 3 shows simultaneously. I'm shooting second unit for the show. I'm literally getting a chance to direct. Still kind of figuring out exactly where I wanted to be. Most of my life, before this, I spent time in production. So now I'm kind of in the middle of the machine and the world has opened up a bit. The guy I was working for ended up not renewing his deal with Jerry Bruckheimer's. So once I thought I kind of landed, all of a sudden there was turbulence all over again. I'm back in production. I ended up jumping into casting for a bit. I actually ended up getting a job. I started acting at one point. I was in Criminal Minds. I did a few shows and movies and whatever. Not the business for me. I was introduced to Steve D'Souza, who, funny enough, wrote Die Hard and Die Hard 2 amongst 48 Hours and Commando. And I redeveloped a pitch for him. And the next thing I knew, I was at a pitch in Cinemax's office. We got a development order, and that started my path in development. And I would sell for TV and films and digital. I produced a series called Unknown Sender, which we sold to Chill and Maker. And after years of working in development, I got close with his manager, Alan Gasmer, who worked at WME for years, and he's a very respected packaging producer, was a packaging agent as well as a manager. And I realized working with writers and directors as a manager was really interesting to me. It was something I did well, and I liked the ability to produce also. So I kind of transitioned into a boutique firm. Built a roster list, and after building a roster and trying my hand at it for a bit, I had the ability to go on my own and work with many different management companies, studios, networks, and that's what I've been doing for the last few years.
Wow. So it sounded like you stayed busy, built yourself a firm basically. That's
Yeah,
incredible.
I have we have an the office is across from the Grove on Fairfax. Right now it's working from home. Um, yeah, there's a production side where we have a few namely 3 or 4 projects that are in good positions, have been before COVID-19. I still feel
Yeah.
confident about them. And on the client base, I have a few writers who are working in writers' rooms.
Yeah.
And, funny, the director who helped get me my first job in LA 10 years ago, I now rep him. And I just got off of a call where we're, setting up his next film.
Awesome. Awesome. So you mentioned COVID. How would you say you've been impacted right now by COVID?
In a very strange way.
Yeah.
Very unexpectedly, I'm actually having a great month. Multiple writers of mine are in various writers' rooms, as either a showrunner, or as a staffer, co-EP, in virtual rooms. And what networks are doing, instead of saying we're just going to develop 1 to 3 episodes and an outline, they're ordering more backup scripts that are keeping my writers busier. So instead of a traditional pilot season, they're preparing to go straight to series if the series looks right, which are keeping writers and certain writers employed at the time. When it comes to actually getting into production, it's definitely a problem.
Mhm.
You know, I think for shows, one of these shows in particular shot in Vancouver, and the thought now is that Vancouver won't allow films to get into production or TV series. So it's finding where to do this. Actors are seemingly the most valuable asset on a film now, and actors really don't want to travel. So sources are telling me that the major streamers are buying up all studio space in the area. So August, September, October, when we have our ducks in line to get into production again, we can really bang out as much as possible during this window.
Yeah.
So the conversations I'm having on the feature side are more so how to, these contained under $5 million or maybe under 10 that we can attract a good cast for and manage, that are attainable and doable. Those are picking up steam. There's definitely an appetite for that. I have one I've optioned myself that I'm doing with New Republic, and potentially a few other companies and attachments I can announce once they're official. Um, and yeah, and the other side of this balance is the uh, theaters. This is how we make most of our money back, is in this first window, and with social distancing, we're looking at such a small percentage of a return. Um, it needs to make sense in the next year. Even Marvel doesn't know how this is going to turn out. So really, it's finding the smart way to get a return on a film, and that looks like the streaming or SVOD business at the moment. But we'll see. So I've just vomited. I hope that's okay.
Oh yeah, no, that's fine. Yeah. So I mean, I've always been confident about, you know, the fate of production, and obviously the way COVID has kind of altered our way of doing things. We're still going to produce. We might find different hacks and different tricks and different production techniques to pull off productions safer, more remotely, uh, more micro produced. But I'm glad to hear that, on your end right now, you're still staying active, because you're still dealing with a lot of development right now, a lot of development and prep. And so as far as production goes, nothing is really halted because nothing's really started yet for you. But once this whole thing kind of blows over and the gates are opened, that's pretty much when you have planned to start into production. So that's fantastic. And at least, you know, there's that positive there with the.
Yeah, we're all figuring this out. Like
Uh-huh.
and I'm working with everybody's working with a lot of people to figure out how do we keep the wheels turning. And you know, part of the issue is because of the way the economy has been hit, the local tax incentives have also been hit. So a film that was going to shoot in New York, for example, that incentive is gone. So we have to find a new home, which is difficult because there's a lot of snow inherent with, you can't really take out. We can't change this in this particular project.
Right.
But I think it's going to shape. It's not just the production, but the distribution as well. We're it's going to be a process.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be a process.
Yeah. How would you say personally you've been impacted?
Personally, I've been eating too much.
Right. As we all have.
Yeah, definitely enjoying the kitchen too much. You know, I'm having a interesting experience as I've been working from home very well, so it keeps my day to day in check. Where I'm trying not to. I find a lot of people are spinning their wheels to justify their jobs to stay busy, or to have a resemblance of normalcy. I'm trying to be realistic, and I know people can't really move the needle so much right now, but there's certain places where their financing hasn't left. They'll still operate business as usual. So it keeps me personally in check by saying, look, there's stuff I can do, but I'm able to take a back seat and say, man, I'd love to catch up on Ozark. So I'm in the middle of Ozark right now, and it's phenomenal. I'm able to enjoy. It's been a while since I've been able to sit back and actually enjoy watching TV or film for my own just enjoyment, without it feeling like homework. And I've had the chance to do that. Jumping into video games, I used to play games a lot more, so I've had time to actually play some games. You know, I'm recently married within the last year and a half, so you know, my wife and I were just cooking a lot. We're enjoying our time together. My wife works in casting, so her job has been affected as well. But you know, we're doing okay. You know, we're doing okay.
Great. Fantastic. Yeah. Yeah. I delved into quite a bit of acting in the last couple of years, and I've noticed the casting is down. A lot of the casting directors out here in the DMV, they're considered CDs, casting directors or casting coordinators, as opposed to agents or anything. But I found that a lot of them have started online courses, online trainings, online seminars. And, you know, like myself, I decided to start reboot the whole podcasting. I've tried the podcasting before, didn't really get much traction, but I think now is like the opportune time to do that. I find that they're doing that too. They're taking advantage of this online thing, this online technology to still reach out, still to stay productive, you know, try to continue to expand their brand as a casting agency or casting casting team, what have you. Yeah, so that's good, and I'm glad that the wife is still staying relatively busy, and you know, just finding workarounds for this thing is can be tough for some folks, and I found, you know, I had a couple of passion projects that I shot, and they were, you know, on the hard drive ready to edit, and so that's, you know, I had to kind of I utilize this entire downtime to complete projects, continue to edit a couple more projects I have on the drives, write. But me and the wife, we have a 2-month-old now, so that's like our main.
Oh, congratulations!
Yeah, thank you. So that's like our main thing, you know. So I feel like I don't think it's a bad thing. I just feel like I talk about the kid every episode of the podcast. So, but yeah, I mean that's pretty much been like this. The main hustle and grind right now is the kid and maintaining the marriage. I mean, it can be tough if you're in front of each other all the time. You start running out of stuff to do with each other, you know. And there's only so much binge watching you can do with each other. You can't really read a book with each other. I don't think you can read a kid's book with your kid, but you can't really sit down and read a Stephen King novel with each other, I don't think. And so there's only so many walks you can take. If we can't go out to brunch or dinner, there's only so many, just, you know, go on a walk, watch a TV show, have dinner with each other, and it's the same thing every night. So it's trying to find, you know, a healthy balance, try to change things up a little bit. I find that for a couple of weeks we were doing dinner upstairs in the dining room, like a fancy setting, and then we might watch TV. So we decided to come down in the lounge that I built. I allow her to come down to the man cave and you know, hang out in there. So we eat down there. Now it's a totally different kind of vibe and view and setting, and switch it up, you know, little things like that. So yeah, it's tricky. So you're saying Ozarks. Anything else you're binge watching? Any other books, movies?
We just finished. So I'm usually not into half hours so much. Everyone's been talking about Schitt's Creek, so I watched Schitt's Creek and pleasantly surprised.
Yeah.
You know, my wife it was her second time watching it, and she really wanted me to see it, and I'm glad I watched it. You know, there are a few movies from South by that are now on iTunes that we're starting to watch. I think it was Sea Fever. That's the one we actually have to finish it today.
Okay, Sea Fever.
Books. Most of my reading has been scripts, because I have such a backlog.
Yeah.
And I've actually found a few that I love. I've actually took on a new client. I've read a script that I thought was phenomenal. Really, it's been, you know, when I'm able, unfortunately, you know, most of my reading, I have this thing in my brain where if I'm reading something, it should be for work related. But I love when I can actually just sit back and like read a Stephen King novel. Like I remember I read The Outsider years ago, and I couldn't help thinking midway through that it would make a great series. Unfortunately, I have my own thoughts about the series compared to the book, but was one I very much. The book I very much enjoyed.
Okay, awesome. So, you kind of address it a little bit, but what would you say your agenda for the next month or two? You know, set of goals, agenda, personally, professionally. Consider that there's a good chance we're still going to be quarantined for the next month or two.
Personally, professionally, personally getting I mean, you know, I spent the first 2 or 3 weeks where we were making foods. You know, I touched on this a little earlier, but I'm starting to do live stream yoga classes. Definitely exercising 3 or 4 times a week. We have an elliptical. You know, I'm doing intermittent fasting, trying to get down to like an appropriate weight where I feel comfortable again. So getting my health in order is important, which is closely there, but I'm usually very active. I'll do a lot of, you know, gym classes or whatnot. Professionally, you know, taking it slow, but appropriately. So, look, I know I can't get into production on something within the next 3 or 4 months. I know there's only I mean, people are laying off people left and right. somebody posted at one point, I remember seeing, if Disney World's closed, if Disney isn't going to bring in Disney money, then it's going to be really hard to get into, to move forward. So this is just the way it is.
Yeah.
So I guess knowing what is attainable are, staffing opportunities. So I don't know. It's weird. It's like finding a balance where I'm able to develop with my clients appropriately with the right expectations. Maybe package, actors if and directors on certain projects that feel attainable. But taking it slow, this is really going to shift schedules and everything, and anything can change at the drop of a dime.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I'm rambling. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, it's great. Rambling's fine. Rambling's fine. I mean, it's important to just have an open, positive mindset about like what is possible for, I guess, what they're calling the new normal. Because things are going to be drastically different because a lot of businesses are severely impacted by this. They might not, restaurants, stores, all sorts of different companies, businesses might not exist when it's all over. And like you said, Disney World and Disneyland, if they completely go under, is that really going to affect Disney as a complete conglomerate corporation? And if so, what's the future for all sorts of other projects that we might want to get into or we could have gotten into, and streaming services or productions, like the whole MCU or the whole Star Wars property, the entire MCU Marvel property, the entire Pixar property. So if there is, if 10% of the entire film and TV industry is gone because Disney went under, that could be impactful. A lot of the restaurants down the street from me, or mom and pop shops. So but also there's these new tactics and hacks that a lot of professionals are finding to use. Like you said, streaming yoga. A year ago, everybody was like, "Oh, I go to this yoga place down the street, hot yoga or intense yoga or beginner yoga," and it's always in person. But for years, I was telling my mom or my dad, even my dad, who's a senior, I said, just go on YouTube and start off slow in your living room. And now everybody and their mother and their kids are doing blankety blank off of YouTube, Zoom, Google, streaming online. And so
I love it, man. I actually think I like it more than going to the class.
Mm-hmm.
And I never really would have given it a fair shot before, which is another really interesting opportunity in that, I don't have to leave the house, find parking, deal with any of that, then have to come back all sweaty. The other piece is, so there's two ways. There's the Zoom yoga class where the instructor will give me adjustments and say, maybe move this. He'll talk to like 30 people. The other piece is I'm paying him, so I don't have to, it's a donation-based thing, but I'm paying him directly instead of the studio. This guy's making bank. Mm-hmm. And I really like him too. I think he's a great dude. He's in San Francisco. I'm in his class with people in Scotland and Europe for $10. The other thing is I can turn the camera off if I just, I just want to take it easy today.
Mm-hmm.
I love it. And then, my wife is doing these casting classes as well over Zoom. So it is creating this new normal where we have this hustle and bustle life that we're coming from that wasn't necessary. I think we're being forced to see a much more simple way of life that is working.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And I've mentioned this a number of times on my podcast, on my show before, where one of my biggest money making gigs was live streaming events, mostly corporate and industrial events, live streaming them with a anywhere between 1 to 3 cameras set up, and live streaming it out to their website, out to their YouTube channel, what have you. And now there are no events at the convention centers or the hotels or the conference centers, you know. But a couple of the rosters that I was doing live streaming for as a freelancer figured out, hey, we can get them on Zoom. They can do a screen share. We can take the whole program of Zoom, patch it through our streaming decks, and then continue to stream for them.
Mm.
And basically, we all got to take a pay cut because we're not driving out there. We're not flying out there. Me as a tech, I'm not hauling 2 Pelicans full of gear, setting up. They shipped me 1 Pelican of gear. I did a semi-perm setup in my studio, and it's there semi-permanently until the new normal. But I'm just zooming these clients Zoom. I'm streaming these new clients Zooms, and that's the new normal for right now. So what's that going to turn into, in a year or two? Are we going to start just do away with conference centers? Are we going to do all these seminars and all these conferences and school and yoga in VR? Like VR has been a thing for years, the Oculus and VR gaming. And, VR gamers are able to go into like this room and just hang out and talk trash to each other, and then say like, hey, let's play this game. And then they all jump into this game. But that VR room could essentially start being a classroom, could be a seminar, it could be a training module, could be school, could be, I'm in the National Guard. My last drill was over Zoom. I mean, VR, and I think VR is, the next tech that's really going to kick this thing into overdrive, because Zoom obviously is killing it. Zoom in the last minute pinch of it, Zoom was the thing. Okay, a bunch of heads, you can even record it, a little extra money to upgrade it, to have a bunch of people on nonstop, And I think the next level in this game is VR. And yeah, there's just, I think the new norm is we have to start looking at what is remote, what is a remote tech, what is a contactless tech, what is a little bit simpler, and a way to connect people from anywhere. We don't have to all 10 of us don't have to meet in one spot. What is the tech for all 10 of us to connect no matter where we are, and also to be able to record it, stream it, put it in a library or on demand, but also additionally put us into a virtual reality or share a content, like with Zoom has the screen share or a program share. Is there a way for us to share our content with each other live? There's all sorts of new unique ways of adapting our technology and our way of doing things for this new normal.
I think you're on. I mean, I think the live component is very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
They're doing live theater. I was very impressed by like D Nice, his live stream on Instagram.
Mm-hmm.
Attracted a couple 100,000 people, and then you're in a chat room with Michelle Obama, P. Diddy, Netflix, Chris Hemsworth, where they're all talking to each other, and you feel like you're there with them.
Mm-hmm.
That's a phenomenon. I mean, that is really, really cool. What would that look like in VR or AR? I don't know. And then you see how SNL is doing their new shows. It's definitely definitely a new world. And it's funny. I'm thinking about one project in particular that was really exciting for me, where this will massively affect that. It takes place. It takes place in the world. It takes place in and around Coachella, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, what does Coachella, what do music festivals look like? What does music, what does coming together look like after this within the next year? And how do what we display on TV affect this? I mean, I know I'm watching, while I'm watching Ozark, or while I'm watching other projects, I see people sitting together in a restaurant, and I'm like, that's unrealistic, because I'm sitting here in this state.
Yeah.
And I've heard this come up often, where how do we make what we're making reflective of the world we're in now, because the world has changed.
Yeah. And even more so, okay, so 50 years ago, 100 years ago, we were able to be we were able to be in contact with each other. And a year or two ago, we were able to be in contact with each other. So we were able to make World War II movies, Civil War movies, Vietnam movies, medieval movies. We now can't even make those kind of movies, right? Because we can't be in contact. So what kind of movies are we going to make right now? We can only make movies unless it's animation, unless it's CGI, unless it's computer animation, old school drawn animation, motion comics. Then we could pull off some stuff like that. So that's a hack where, like, animations are probably going to be the next big thing. Everyone's going to take their scripts and have to do it animated wise. And, I remember years ago, Morgan Freeman was doing voiceovers in his house. He had his own studio. Sean Connery, I think, did a bunch of stuff for, what was that movie he did where he was the writer? Punch the Keys, that line, Finding Forrester.
Oh
and
yeah.
he had to do a couple pickup lines. He did it over the phone, and they recorded him because he had gone back to home. He had gone back home. They said, "Oh, hey, we needed you to do a couple quick last things." He goes, "I'm not coming out there." Goes, "Okay, let's do it over the phone." I think they shipped him a higher quality phone. He dialed in. They recorded it. He did a bunch of pickup lines. That was 10 years ago. So now it's all going to be at-home voiceover recording for animations, for motion comics, for stop motion animation, computer Pixar animation, anime type animation, all that sort of deal. And even video games. Studios are going to have to look at what's a simple setup to mail someone. Well, I mean, maybe not that. I'll forget that. But they probably have a bunch of like backed up footage and they have such a database of facial rendering that they could easily render, say Bruce Willis, who was never in a video game before, easily render him now with modern technology and render him as a character in those cutscenes in video games, and continue to make maybe not video games, but movies how we know cutscenes of video games to be. Start making movies that way, and it's all facial rendering, all real world rendering of these action scenes, because there's so much already in a database that could be the new norm for a while, until we get back into the old school way of making movies, like the Jackie Chan movies and the Rocky movies. Like you said, you worked with D'Souza, like his classic movies of Die Hard and Predator, where they were actually in the woods, actually, stuck in an elevator shaft with a camera. But for right now, it's going to be a lot of animation and a lot of at-home voice recordings.
I actually had I was in a meeting with a company, with a VFX company, 2 years ago, actually, about something very similar, where we were talking about using the assets from a video game to make a TV show, because they look very similar.
Mm-hmm.
That's something people are definitely talking about with like the Unreal Engine. I represent two writer animators that are jack in the box to do everything. So they had two projects they did them completely themselves that went, like 10 million views viral. One is called A Stranger Things Christmas, which combines a Stranger Things mixed with Peanuts, and the other is Frozen is the New Black, which is Disney princess are new black. It's brilliant. It's
Hell
fantastic.
yeah, dude. Frozen is the new black. That's awesome.
I really amazing. It's Lila Hav and Oren Mendez, and like they've put together some really great material
Yeah.
that we're taking out. Animation is an interesting world before this for multiple reasons. One being, before COVID happened, everybody was concerned that there was going to be another writer's strike. And I mean, this
Okay.
was
Yeah.
since October, people have been terrified because last year in April, the WGA had all of the writers leave their agents. And it upturned the industry because packaging was such an essential piece to these major agencies' business. And the Writers Guild basically said, we're not going to stand for it anymore. Writers can't be with agents who package, but they can be with managers. That was okay. And really, it was leading into the next fight that was supposed to happen in April of this year with the AMPTP to renew the new negotiations. So all of the major company, networks and studios, Universal, NBC Universal, CBS, ABC, Disney, they're all launching their new streaming platforms, and right now is the time to really negotiate so writers don't get screwed on SVOD deals instead of broadcast deals. And we were pretty much prepared to go into a complete strike for the next year, and there was a buying spree so that we could withstand that. And what is not a part of the WGA is animation. It's a separate guild. So I was pushing my clients who aren't in animation to go towards animation a bit because people were very much interested in it. And you're going to start seeing a lot more animation come out because of the preparations for this.
Mm-hmm.
We are getting into talks now with the AMPTP again, where on top of everything with COVID, we could still look at a strike, which would be devastating, which would kill us.
Yeah.
But I'm pretty sure most people do not want to do that, especially after the effects of the agency fight last year.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. WGA COVID strike. Wow. Look out. Well, I don't know what to say about that. I mean, like, I'm not a union man. Like I said, I'm still building my career. So I'd love to get into a union of some sort, SAG or WGA or DGA, but it's just, I'm out here in the DMV, so it's interesting being out here. It's mostly non-union, mostly big fishes in a small pond type deal. So, I'm staying relatively busy, productive. Well, I was anyway before the COVID. I was doing great for myself, but yeah, like getting out there into the union and the union and the big Hollywood productions is still a goal, but maybe that's more for us to talk about offline. But yeah, so I guess the new normal. And what would you say if you had one last point, one bit of advice for our viewers, actors, writers, managers, casters, like just basically those in our field. If you had one point of advice or something like that, what would that be?
So I think it ties into the last thing you said, actually. I found a project got in front of me from a writer who is not in LA. He lives in North Carolina. with a phenomenal concept that could be done on a contained film, all in one house, 3 or 4 actors, sci-fi. There's an element to it that is very grounded, that is real, that's super original, and he knocked it out the park. And I purchased it from him, and that was made. I mean, look, I'm not a financier, I'm not a studio. Realistically, I love his writing. I'd love to rep him, but there's not much I can really do until he gets a movie made, or until, there's still steps to be done. So, and this is a movie I'd love to produce. So I told him, let me run with the rights for it. We put the paperwork together. And this is the one I've set up with New Republic right now, that we have out to some really interesting people. I would say no matter where you are, and also because of the digital age we're at, there is a need for content. Not being in the union can be an absolute benefit for you. If you are able to think creatively and put these movies together, there's a market for it. And it's very smart. It's a character-driven piece, with this external element that is crushing this group of people, and there's an analogy within it. And I think just thinking about it, you could do it from home. Something you could totally do from home. And one thing I love, I wrote at one point, and this is years ago. Actually, D'Souza pushed me into it at one point because he thought I should have that opportunity, and I'm very grateful for him to push me in that direction. What I realized was, when you're sitting at home with Final Draft or a paper, or just a pen and a pad, you can create.
Yeah.
Put stuff out there, and
yeah.
Look, you can get it in front of people, and you can make things happen. So I would push people to write. I would push people to read scripts that are really well done, to emulate that. Yeah, don't get forced into thinking you're helpless, because there's definitely things that can be done. And you also think about what we just discussed. There is a new normal, there's a new world, and the content that's out there right now isn't reflective of that. So how do you make these elements that maybe these cliches we've seen before work in a new way in this new world? So yeah, that's what I would say.
Absolutely. Fantastic. Well, if you got any plugs, links, socials, sites that you want to plug for our viewers?
Honestly, I got nothing. I got you can find me on IMDb. You're
not on the gram?
I'm on Instagram. This is my personal account, so I think
you don't want to put it out there.
Yeah, my business is kind of funny. I try to stay in the shadows a bit more. I try to stay in the background. And my clients, they have their websites. They have everything they do. I would say I have a client on Motherland, or 2 clients who are writers on Motherland Fort Salem. So I'll plug that show. So watch that.
All right, Motherland Fort Salem. You got it. That'll be it.
Freeform.
No, I know. Freeform. Yeah, but that's actually on my watch list to watch. So Motherland Fort Salem. Well, yeah, you heard it here, folks. Zach Book, repping all the great filmmakers out there in New York and LA. And to my viewers out there, like, subscribe, share, comment, thumbs up if you would, and ring that bell for notifications, and check us out next time.